Hello. Hi, guys. We are live. It is Friday, October 23rd, and I'm here for your stimulus update and Q&A. So I'm Jamie Trull. I am a profit strategist. I'm also a CPA, and I have been coming here to kind of help lead you through all the craziness of the stimulus relief bills, the CARES Act, PPP loans, EIDL loans, unemployment, all the things, you guys. So today I'm live right now on our Financial Literacy for Women Business Owners Facebook group. If you're not in it, come join us. It is a great group. We're answering questions over there. There's a lot of free resources over there for all of this stuff. So make sure to go to jamietrull.com/group if you want to join us. It's an inclusive group, so you don't have to be a woman to join. And I'm also live right now on my YouTube channel, Jamie Trull. Make sure you subscribe, and on my business page. So hi, everybody. Say hi when you're here so that I know you can hear me. And we're going to get started in just a second. So I see you guys joining now. Hi, guys. Hi, Cheryl. Hi, Tanya. Hello, everybody. I'm seeing a bunch of people from YouTube. Yay. Hi, guys. Okay. So I do not have a huge update today as far as stimulus efforts. It's like, man, it feels like a yo-yo these days. I don't know if you guys have been following it. It's like this will they, won't they with this stimulus bill. So just to back up, what I'm talking about is the next round of like stimulus, a full-scale stimulus bill. So similar to the CARES Act, they've been talking about a second round of funding. So that would be funding for businesses, funding for COVID testing, funding for schools, funding for all different funding for the next round of stimulus checks, which everybody loved, right? Funding for unemployment, all of those things are kind of wrapped up in this next round of stimulus that has been being talked about by Congress. Literally, I mean, it's been since at least May. So we're talking about, we're talking about something that has been they've been talking, and they cannot come to a deal. It just seems like it's this cat and mouse game that you guys, one day I wake up and they're like, it looks like there might be a deal this week. And then it's, nope, they put an end to discussions. And nope, discussions are back on. And now like, it's just been this like crazy roller coaster for those of you guys who have been going along it. And this week is no exception. Seemed like on Monday, there might have been some prospects. They put a kind of a line in the sand for today. We have heard nothing, and it doesn't seem very likely. Now, who knows? Like miracles happen. I feel like it's going to be the day, because I keep being the one that's like, it could happen. It could happen. I feel like the day that I'm like, you guys, this thing is not going to happen. That's the day they're going to pass something. So I'm just going to say it. It's not happening, you guys. It's not happening. Maybe somebody will hear me, and later on tonight, we'll get some kind of crazy surprise. But I would be very surprised at this point if anything were to pass ahead of the election. Okay. And even if they come to an agreement, because right now they're just talking about terms, even if they come to a base agreement, they still have to write the whole dang bill. Now they can pull from places, but there's a lot of work that's got to go into that. And then they've got to hold the votes, because remember, this has to go through the Senate, the House, and be signed by the president. So the chances of all of that happening specifically before the election are slim. Now, what are the chances after the election? I don't know that they're any better, to be honest. I don't know that they're any better, because at least the one benefit of the urgency right now is the fact that they're all thinking about what this is going to look like for re-election for them. Right now, sometimes I think they're all, and I mean all, I'm talking about all sides here, are really keyed in on how is this going to look in this re-election battle? How is this going to frame me and my party, right? And so I think once you get through that and they're not as worried about re-election, then what happens? We don't know, right? We don't know. You would think that because re-election is, on the horizon for a lot of these people, that might make them more likely to deal, but that doesn't necessarily seem to be the case. So we'll have to wait and see. Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate it. It's a blue Yeti, but it's not blue. It's white. And I just recently learned, apparently I used to always talk to it like this. It is one where you're supposed to talk into the top of it. And so apparently it's supposed to be like this, which I didn't realize for a really long time. So now my sound is better, if you've noticed. Okay, so ask me your questions. If you've got questions about PPP forgiveness, if you've got questions about EIDL, if you've got questions about what's in the stimulus, well, we don't really know, but what could be in the stimulus, let me know what your questions are. I'm here to answer them. I do have to go pretty quick today, so I can't answer all of them probably, but go ahead and get your questions in as soon as you can. And Elise, see, y'all knew. You're like, she's not using it right, and no one's telling me. No one told me until finally someone told me. So you live and you learn. Okay. So I do see a question. All right. How long do you have to apply for forgiveness for PPP? You have 10 months from the end of your covered period before you will have to start making payments on your PPP loan. Some of your banks have not updated their systems and processes. They might still, some people have been getting notices that payments are going to be due soon. They are not. Okay. So there is out on the website for treasury.gov. There's an FAQ even that goes into it. If you have a bank that's telling you you've got to start making payments soon, that bank didn't realize that the PPP Flexibility Act, which was passed in June, changed that. Because they basically said, okay, we don't want people to have to start making payments on their loan before they've even gone through the forgiveness process, because that wouldn't make sense, right? Then they have to give people money back, and that just was crazy. So they realized, okay, well, we're going to give people 10 months to apply for forgiveness. So you've got a while from the end of your 8 or 24 weeks. And so long as you apply by that point in time, you don't have to start making payments until then. So again, if your bank is telling you otherwise, they are wrong. And I'm going to show you guys, actually, in case you do have a bank that's doing that, because this has actually been surprisingly frequent that we're seeing banks tell people that, or at least, I don't know if these are automated notices or if the banks really actually think that this is due, but they're not. So if you go to treasury.gov and then you hit the red bar up here, I believe there's a lot of stuff in here, you guys, but I believe if you go to the question, I think this is the right one. We'll see. It might be, okay, let's see. I'm just looking to see if I can find it really quickly. If I can, then I will. Okay. So here it says, however, if the borrower does not apply for loan forgiveness within 10 months after the last date, loan payments are no longer deferred. Let's see. There's probably one more in here. Okay, here we go. If a borrower submits a timely loan forgiveness application, does the borrower have to make any payments on its loan prior to the SBA remitting the forecast amount, if any? Answer: as long as a borrower submits its loan forgiveness application within 10 months of the completion of the covered period, that's the 8 or 24 weeks, for most of you probably 24 weeks, the borrower is not required to make any payments until the forgiveness amount is remitted to the lender by the SBA. Y'all probably can't even see this because this is probably tiny. Hang on. So I'm reading this question and this answer. So you don't have to make, if you don't have to make, do you see that? The borrower is not required to make any payments until the forgiveness amount is remitted by the lender to the SBA. You should not have to make any payments. Okay, so send this, go find this. This is the loan forgiveness FAQs. If your bank is telling you that you owe money anytime soon, you need to send this to them because you have 10 months to apply for forgiveness. So that's where a lot of people, I think, have been really concerned about, I have to do it and they're going to miss it. But you've got time. You've got time. So, okay, so hopefully that helps. What else we got? Okay. Okay, there's a bunch now. Let's see. Should we just go ahead and push our banks to finish the forgiveness? So as far as timing, and I keep meaning to put it up there, but there is an article with Gusto that I wrote about timing and when it matters. you don't need to. So some banks are still waiting on that next stimulus that I was talking about at the beginning of this. Some banks are wondering like, okay, we're going to wait because there are some proposed changes, or at least there were in the most recent draft we saw of a stimulus bill had some changes. One of those changes was potentially not having to adjust the EIDL loan out of your forgiveness amount. Another change was perhaps not having to have as much backup given to you to forgive the loan. For loans that were under $150,000, it would have reduced some of the requirements around that. So some banks have still decided to sit on it and wait and hope, right? And maybe if something doesn't pass by the election, they might decide they're not going to do that anymore. A lot of banks are already taking applications. It's up to you. It's up to you whether you feel like you want to push them or not. Some of the changes could be positive though. So if you go through the forgiveness right now, and then later they simplify the rules and you wouldn't have had to provide all the paperwork and all these things that you did, you might end up doing extra work. So it just depends on you. But there are some situations where you may want to go ahead and apply, specifically if you're considering laying off employees. And I've written about that a lot in the Gusto article that I wrote. Okay. So that kind of covered that. I keep meaning to share that Gusto article with you guys. Let's see. Yes, from the end of the covered period, not the date you received the money. Correct. The end of the covered period. Not gone, but not great. Before or after. I talked about that a little bit at the beginning of this. There's a chance. There's always a chance, right? There's always a chance. It seems to be dwindling, and I think motivations change. So I'm not going to get into this different political parties and what their motivations are, but they're not always the same. Now, they are always the same in that they're all trying to get reelected, but the parties have very differing ideals around a lot of this stuff. So some of it depends on after the election. Now, remember, we got a whole lame duck period that the chances of anything meaningful really getting done in that time period, I would say, are slim. And that's true. That's just true with lame duck periods in general between the election and when our new president and Congress comes into play. I'm not overly hopeful because you've lost now the motivation of the election. It's gonna change the dynamic. So now maybe something comes in January after we know we have a president and we have a new Congress. Like, who knows who it's going to be? Could be the same president, could be different. But maybe once we have kind of the makeup and we know what it's going to look like, we might be able to get a better picture of that. Truthfully, and this is not speaking from a place of partisanship, this is just the matter at hand. Democrats are more likely to pass bigger stimulus bills. Republicans are more likely to pass smaller, more targeted ones. So take that for what it is, as far as what the chances are before/after any election. Okay, that's my best way. Did I tiptoe around that as much as I could? People get very upset with me sometimes. I really try hard to be nonpartisan about this stuff and just speak about the facts of the matter, because I think sometimes we get super charged with the emotional part of it, which is understandable. Everybody's got their own emotions about it. But as I've said before, the way you're going to see all of this is very much going to be through the lens of whatever your political ideology is, especially if you have a strong political ideology. If you don't, then maybe not. But a lot of people have a very strong perspective. And so they're probably going to see things however their specific ideology sees it. So, okay, let's see. The dollar amount of forgiveness is unique to you. So it's going to be based on the calculation of how you use the money. So I have a lot of videos on that. You're watching me over on YouTube. Go subscribe to my channel. I have a whole playlist just of PPP videos that goes into how to spend the money correctly to get forgiven and what those rules are. There are 3 different PPP forgiveness applications now. I do a tutorial on all of them. So, so check out that information, but it really is going to be unique to you. And you as the borrower are the one who's responsible for deciding what for figuring out what your PPP forgiveness is within the rules. I do have a tracker, so that might help as well if you don't have it already. JamieTrull.com/PPP tracker. Here, I'll put it in the comments. .com PPP tracker. It's been really popular, and it will help you kind of do those calculations. Okay, let's see. Okay. Let me see. And if I miss any of these, I will come back, I promise. How do we reconcile our overpayment on the PPP application? I'm not sure exactly what you mean. Do you mean you were overfunded? If you were overfunded for PPP, meaning they gave you more than they should have given you, then there's a chance you won't be forgiven for a part of that, if that makes sense. So you are limited to paying yourself. So for example, a lot of sole proprietors were overfunded because they were funded based on gross, like their how much they made before expenses were taken out versus the net profit, which is what it was supposed to be. You can only be forgiven for, though, your Schedule C, line 31, divided by 12 times 2.5. That's the max you can pay yourself and be forgiven if you're a sole proprietor. So if you were given more than that, you can spend it on rent, you can spend it on utilities, you can spend business-related rent, utilities, if you have them. If not, then you may have a portion that ends up being unforgiven, okay? But I would talk to your bank about that situation if they knowingly overfunded you or if they miscalculated your loan. And perhaps blanket forgiveness would help that. But either way, even with blanket forgiveness, you would still have to certify that you use the money appropriately. And I'm not sure if you got overfunded, if you could really certify to that, if you know what I mean. But it depends on what the wording is, because if they make the wording very broad, which they might, then you maybe could. Okay. So if you were overfunded, I would hold out. If you were overfunded on your PPP loan, I would probably hold out and wait to see what happens on the stimulus, because it's only going to make things easier to get forgiveness and not harder. Okay. Judy says, still stumped when to use base salary hourly wages. Do we use 2019 base wages or all cash compensation to determine if employee goes on table 1 or 2? Okay, you're getting into very specifics on the full form application. So remember, you only have to do that if you can't do the easy form. So if you're under 50,000, okay, if your PPP loan was 50,000 or under, you do the newest form, which is the 3805S. 3805S, I think that's right, form on the Treasury website. Now, this all goes through your bank, so you don't download it from the Treasury website necessarily and hand it to your bank. Your bank probably has a portal or something like that you will go to, but ultimately they should, at some point, if they haven't already, update that so that those under 50,000 are essentially only being asked the questions that are on the 3508S. I think that's right. I might be transposing some numbers. Application. Then if you're over 50,000, you go and look and see if you can do the EZ form, which in that case, you don't need to do the tables you're talking about either, Judy. If you can't do either of those, then you go to the full form. And on the full form, there's some extra tables. The salary hourly wages are the way that I interpret it and understand it. Here's the caveat. This is my interpretation of it based on what I've read, which is a lot. But different people may have different interpretations. I read it as base salary or hourly wages. So if you haven't yet, Judy, my tracker would be really helpful for you because it does show you. I have different lines for like variable pay. So point being, when you're trying to determine, because what Judy is basically asking is, for determining the salary hourly reduction, right? Meaning, did I reduce any of my employees by more than 25% on their salary or hourly wages? You are going to look at annualized salary, right? So I paid them, usually their salary was 50,000 and I cut it to 30,000, right? That would be more than 25% of a shift. Most people didn't really do that. And same thing with hourly wages, right? Like if you paid them $17 an hour and you cut them down to $13 an hour, right? That's what it's talking about, that reduction, not overall pay. Because overall pay is a little bit different, right? Because if you paid out less in commissions because you had less business, well, that's not your fault. You shouldn't be penalized for that. You had less business, so they paid less in commissions, right? So those, you don't have to keep up their same level of commissions or tips or anything like that for getting forgiveness. And that was a common misconception at the beginning. But when the final actual guidelines came out, it was like, no, if you have hourly employees and you reduced their hours, that would not be a problem for the salary hourly reduction. Okay. That might come into play though. That might be an issue for your FTE count. So those are the two things. So go take a look at, I've got a couple of videos on it, but the full form forgiveness application walkthrough that I do. That's over on my YouTube channel, because that's going to go into all of this. Because for some of you guys, you're like, what are we even talking about? And this is only if you can't do those other two applications, then you have to go through this whole process of figuring out, did I reduce pay? Did I reduce my FTEs? And so there's different interplay between those, but it's much easier in the video. I walk you through it kind of graphically and show you how that works. So these are always a little tough to speak through in a way that really makes sense. Okay. All right. I just lost where I was. Let me see. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just reading through to find one I haven't answered. Okay. Your bank is telling you to wait. We're less than 50,000 and don't have the FTE we used to have. Do they have to take our forgiveness application? So if you're less than 50,000, it doesn't matter about your FTE anymore. So that was what they just passed. I don't know, last week, the week before, 2 weeks ago, I think. They passed where loans under 50,000, the FTE requirement to keep up your FTE or to rehire back to your old FTE does not apply anymore. You cannot have, if you are under 50,000, you do that 3508S, 3805, 3508, somebody can correct me, but that's the form you're going to do. And it has no requirements around FTEs. It does ask you for number of employees then and now, but that doesn't matter. So don't let that freak you out, right? It doesn't factor into your calculation anymore. So don't let the fact that they're asking you for numbers, because they're just asking you for base employee numbers, not even FTE, right? Because FTE is like a fractional thing that you have to calculate. Number of employees is just, okay, I have 10 part-time and 5 full-time. I have 15 for the purpose of what they want you to put on that application. So I do have a YouTube video specifically on that application as well that I want you to go take a look at. That one just came out last week, so it should be able to walk you through that. But you shouldn't have to worry about if it's under 50,000. And you can't really I don't think you can make a bank take your application. I don't know. I mean, if people needed to lay off people and it was going to put you in a spot where you were not going to get safe harbor because you had to lay off people, then I don't know. Then I might be a little pushy about it. But again, that's for a specific subset of people who had the bigger loans and need to lay people off. Okay. Oh, thank you, Jenny. Thank you. So here's the Gusto article. I wish it was like smaller so you guys could see it, but thank you, Jenny. That's the article I'm referring to. So when I talk about laying people off, I want you to go read that article. If this is you, if you're in a spot where your employee level is good now, and if you applied now, you'd get safe harbor, but you may have to lay some people off between now and December 31st, right? If that is you, or even into the future, if that's you, then go read that article, because it'll tell you why it is best then to actually, potentially could be best to go ahead and apply. Okay. Let's see. Oh, this is sweet. Thank you, Tanya. She says, my company is an essential business. When when Michigan closed down, I was terrified having you walk me through so much from PPP to EIDL. You're still here. Yay. I love, you guys flood me with these stories. Go put them on the Facebook page or wherever, because I love hearing about, just seeing it. Things were so crazy, and still are for a lot of you guys. And I recognize that things were so crazy for so long. And so scary, I know. And I love seeing our business is back. We're doing better. Like we were able to get through this. Like I love hearing the success stories on the back end of it. If that's you, please come tell us. Cause I want to like celebrate you and celebrate, that fact. Now, again, I know a lot of people are still in the middle of it, and I'm going to continue to be here and help you navigate these waters as best I can. Okay. Okay. So you applied with your 2019 Schedule C, but you changed to an S Corp. Not sure if forgiveness will be based on 2019 or 2020 pay stubs. So your forgiveness amount will be still based on 2019, the total amount you can be forgiven for. 2019, net line 31, Schedule C, line 31, divided by 12 times 2.5. Take that amount, make sure you pay yourself over your covered period via payroll, via actual pay stub payroll, okay, to be safe. Pay that out over your 24 weeks to yourself. And what I mean by payroll is you need to pay that in W-2 wages and salary. So as an S Corp, you should be paying yourself a reasonable salary. That was something a lot of S Corps got into a lot of trouble with this whole COVID thing. You should be paying yourself a reasonable salary. Salary is in the form of W-2 wages, typically paid via payroll service. So make sure that you are doing that and that you have pay stubs and payroll reports that you can then give to support the amounts that you paid yourself. Because technically this year you're not in, you're no longer a sole proprietor or LLC. So this year you can't just take draws and have that be considered your salary. What they want to see is salary. So for those of you who had a switch like that, that's how you should handle that. The amount is based on your 2019, your Schedule C, but what you get forgiven for, you want to make sure to pay out at least that amount over that 24 weeks to yourself in the form of actual W-2 wages. If you do that, then you should be forgiven for your entire PPP loan. Okay, hopefully that helps. Okay, I'm pretty sure I missed some. Okay, let's see. All right, we borrowed $32,000 and our business is an LLC, and we have one business partner that is leaving for a better job offer. My husband is getting, at the end of the year, we're going to shut this company down and open just under me. I really need to get forgiveness done ASAP. I mean, it depends on when your covered period is. So if you're done with your 24 weeks, like if you haven't finished your time frame, then probably, yeah. Before you really go through that process, it's probably best. You're probably going to have the best chance at forgiveness if you apply before you start winding everything down. If you're over with your 8 weeks or your 24 weeks, right? Then it's less important unless you need to meet safe harbor, unless you're trying to meet safe harbor. So go take a look at those videos about safe harbor. I have a whole video on safe harbor on my YouTube channel too that will help. Sorry, losing my voice. Okay, Michelle asks, as a sole proprietor, I received PPP end of June. I intend to use 100% for payroll. Is it possible to pay myself a lump sum for the total amount in 1 month? Yes. Yes. So as a sole proprietor, it matters less how you pay yourself. The only reason the timing of when you pay yourself, because all they ask you on the application is how much did you pay yourself? Now you do have to show you might, depending on your bank, have to show bank statements that show that transfer. I think it's dumb. Y'all know I think it's dumb. But you may have to show that. Sole proprietors, it makes very little sense to have to do that. But that's a rant for another day, you guys. So if you're going to use 100% of it to pay yourself, you can just pay yourself in one lump sum. Totally fine. It only matters if you're also claiming unemployment, in which case you likely have to spread that over about a 10-week period, depending on your state unemployment rules. But that's a separate issue. For PPP, though, for forgiveness purposes, you can pay yourself out in one lump sum. All right. Yeah, you do not need to split it out. Okay, so, oh, good. Okay, so the person, I think this is the same person that was asking me if their period was over. So if your period is over, it matters less unless you need to get safe harbor. So if your period is over and done with, then, and you spent it the way that you were supposed to spend it, right? That's the key. If you spent it the way you were supposed to spend it and you kept your FTE up during that time frame, then it's not going to impact you, right? You don't, it doesn't matter when you apply because they're going to look first at what did you do during that time period. And then if you didn't do what you were supposed to do during that time period, then the next is, well, do you get safe harbor for some reason? And again, I have a whole video on what safe harbor is, but safe harbor keeps you from having to get your forgiveness reduced because of laying off employees, basically, as the main one. Okay, guys, I have got to run today. But I will be back next Friday to have another Q&A, and I will be updating you if we do potentially hear anything at all of use on this next stimulus bill. But I am just operating under the assumption at this point that nothing's coming right now. And then we'll have to reassess probably after the election would be my guess. But, you know, miracles happen, so we will see. But I will talk to you guys soon. You guys are awesome. Bye.